opening statement about the Wisconsin game.
I had a chance to watch the film of the Wisconsin game, all three phases. I think what it really showed is the progress that has been made from a physical standpoint and a personnel standpoint, really from 2017, 2018. Very pleased with how we matched up physically. And after watching the film, I saw it more in the trenches. Saw it in the offensive line and the defensive lines, matching up really against two of the best lines in all of college football. Definitely the best offensive line in college football, and probably the most sound, stout front in defense. Defensively in college football with how they're built down the middle. Defensively, a couple guys that stood out. Masai White was outstanding. The whole unit played well together. I thought Jeremy Darvin put forth just great effort. Showed a lot of flash as a defensive tackle, and Jalen George did the same thing. Having Evan Sainer back, Julian Lewis back, just be able to rotate those guys was really, really good for us. And then, our back end played well. Played disciplined, played top down. But we got to also, keep points off the board. I know it sounds crazy as well as our defense played. I know that their expectation is to hold a defense or to hold an offense like that under 30 points. Offensively, the guys that really stood out to me up front, Miles Pate was great. Him moving to tackle was a great move by TJ Woods. It made us very good at the point of attack, very physical. The double teams that I saw from he and Jordan Meredith were very good as I've seen since we've been here. And then the left side, Cole Spencer settled in nicely. Forget about him, that he was really a part-time starter last year for the last third of the season. So he's a true sophomore playing next to another sophomore in Tyler Witt, and they partnered well. Seth Jost held his own against 346-pound nose tackle. It's going to be an NFL starter in Sangapalu. So the matchups were good. Drew Eccles, very pleased with how he played. 0 turnovers for Drew. Didn't really leave the ball in harm's way often. Did a good job with ball security. The fact that we were able to rush the ball over 120 yards against a defensive front and a defensive unit that hadn't given up 100 yards rushing against the non-conference opponent since I believe it was 2013. Those are all positive signs. Where we obviously are not we don't come away from this game with positive feedback on is situational football. Offensively, third down and red zone. We've got to continue as a coaching staff, me as a play caller, to put our players in the best positions in those situations, but also to practice different looks against the defense like Wisconsin. We practiced against the looks that we had seen on tape. They might mix up a look here and there, but we got to anticipate that and give Drew different looks as well. And then we got to continue to hone in on the mistakes, the turnovers. Obviously, one of them on a trick play, is hard one to fault anybody for. It was one of those that it was comedy of errors. I do want to be aggressive down there. I want to give confidence in our players that we're gonna unload everything we got. But that was an unfortunate turnover for us there, and then Shanley, I thought he did a great job at the end of the game, scrambling to get us a big play, get us inside the 2-yard line. But he's got to carry the ball with two hands when he gets into those type of compromising situations. Special teams was pleased with, for us to lose our punter, Ranella coming in, he's going to get better and better as the year goes on, but didn't have any returns against his punts, which is great. So the net punt was a good statistic. It was not outstanding, but it was in that 35 to 37 range for net punt is pretty good. Have 0 returns against you. We all know that Ranella, as he gets more comfortable as the starting punter, in addition to his kickoff duties, he's going to hit some bombs. He's got an NFL type caliber leg. And Ryan Nuss, 1 for 1, liked his kick. He looked really solid and firm in the way he kicked that ball. And I think our special teams units covered well for the most part. That opening kickoff of the season was as good of a kickoff coverage look as we've ever had, and to do that against a team of the caliber of Wisconsin was really impressive.
In terms of Drew, how impressed were you with how he was able to extend plays with his legs? You knew he could do it, but to actually see him do it against a defense like Wisconsin's, how impressed were you? Very. Wisconsin is a team that their pass rush isn't like ballistic and over aggressive, so they two gap and they stay in their gaps a lot, which makes scrambling even more challenging. And so when you watch Drew
A lot of times when you scramble or when you take off in the pocket, it's because of over pursuit by the front, the defensive front. So you have, it's easy to get vertical right now and find something down the field in the throwing game or take off and run. What you saw Drew do at times was maneuver almost like a boxer. It was reset his feet left, right, maneuver through. He's got the ability to make a lot of plays, off schedule. And one thing that we're getting used to at receiver, tight end, and running back is when our quarterback does take off and gets outside the pocket, we've got to be disciplined to get into our scramble rules as receivers. So essentially all your routes are off at that point in time. Now you're off schedule. So we have rules that we implement and we practice them for when the quarterback does get outside the pocket. And there were some times in the game where we did well. Xavier Lane had a great one. It was a big play, a big chunk play, an explosive play for us, 16 yards greater. And then there were other opportunities where Drew's outside the pocket and receivers are kind of turning around running the opposite way. We want those guys to become viable pass threats and to work into their scramble rules. And we got to get better at that because we have a quarterback, and really the other three quarterbacks are very capable of extending plays.
How does the quarterback depth chart kind of work out now that you've seen what Davis can do, but obviously you get Steven back this week too?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Steven was the scout team player of the week. Did a really nice job giving a look of Alex Hornibrook for our defense. I think he handled and learned from the mistake that he made, and he's ready to re-enter the fold. I think Drew obviously is a guy that we have a lot of confidence in and a lot of trust in and faith in. But even watching the way Shanley came off the bench and performed against a really good defense. I mean, we never got to a situation in that game where Wisconsin unloaded their benches. That was their starting units for 4 quarters, which says a lot about the type of respect that they had for how we were playing against them at times. But Shanley went out there and did some good things. Steve's going to really re-enter the competition, and he and Davis are going to split up reps. And then the last piece is we got to find a way to get the big fella, Kevaris Thomas, out there. And I think this would be a great game to potentially allow him to play a little bit. It's obviously four quarterbacks that are talented. I like that problem. I feel it bodes well for our future. To get Davis Shanley reps as a really a freshman quarterback, in front of 80,000 people on the road against the defense like that, and for him to perform that way, that's really good for the development of your program.
What are going to be some keys to beating a Maine defense that only gave up 116 yards last week?
Yeah, Maine looked great on film. University of New Hampshire, the traditions there, the Chip Kelly, Ryan Day, offensive tradition there at UNH, being ranked number 7 in the country, preseason number 2 in the dominant CAA conference, the Colonial Athletic Association. When I watched that game, I didn't recognize what I saw because UNH is typically a 400 to 550 yard offensive output team. But what I did see is a Maine team that blitzes a lot. They blitz combination pressure, over 50% of the snaps on first and second down. That's a very different challenge than what Wisconsin brought. Wisconsin's a very sound and stout front that doesn't move their front, doesn't bring a lot of extra blitzers very often, and makes you earn everything. This is a defense that, you have got to have a great protection answer plan, and that's going to be the key, is how do we handle their pressures, their blitz packages. They have a defensive line that's a penetrating defensive line. Really a player that stands out to me is Charles Mitchell, who wears number 5 this year, wore number 58, I believe, last year. He is a playmaker. He was a big problem for UNH's offensive line. And then another player, their Sam linebacker, their rover, they call him, is Sterling Sheffield. Long, 6'2", 240, plays the nickel position. Same as Coco Darden, just a different body type. And then lastly, their corner, wore number 26 last year, is wearing number 1 this year, is Manny Patterson. He's got length as well. So it's a veteran defensive group. They play very aggressively. You can tell that they're coached by a defensive head coach, and he is an aggressive-minded individual because they play aggressively in all 3 phases. Their offense, they're going to get the ball to Ernest Edwards, 81. Any which way that they can get the ball to 81, they're going to get it to him. Reverses, sweeps, screens, take shots down the field. And they got a quarterback, it's very similar to to Stephen Duncan, a bigger, sturdy type, likes to sit in the pocket and throw the ball down the field. That's Chris Ferguson. He's a 6'4", 220-pound QB that wants to throw the ball down the field. So we got to play top down against this defense, or this offense, excuse me.
Maine had kind of a running back fight committee last week. How do you defend against that?
Maine? Yeah, last year they lost one of the best running backs in FCS. I think he transferred to Liberty, and I think he was a big part of that, that victory against ODU, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was granted eligibility immediately because he was a grad transfer. But they did a nice job. They have some tough backs. They have a redshirt junior and a redshirt freshman that are big, run behind their pads, downhill backs, and they're going to play under center. So it is good that we saw Wisconsin in week 1. Because typically you play a team either in FCS or another group of 5 team. Pretty much everybody runs a version of the spread offense. These guys certainly have spread elements to their offense, but they want to be under center and they want to run fly sweep and they want to pound the ball downhill against you. So we have seen some of that from Wisconsin, which is going to help us in our preparation to not deviate wholesale from what we did against Wisconsin.
Coach, how much are you looking forward to getting back in the house for the home game?
We're pumped. I mean, Cage the Elephant, student section, completely fired up, ready to go. I can't tell you how excited I am about just the atmosphere that we expect at the Houch. And our players and our coaching staff and myself, we love our fan base and we love the support that they give us and the energy that they provide for us. And we want to make sure that we put forth a great performance for our fans against an offense and defense unit from Maine and special teams that are really confident coming in here. So this isn't a team that's limping in here. They're coming in with a lot of confidence. And, I think we gained some confidence for how we matched up physically with Wisconsin. But, make no mistake about it, we got beat by 31 points, and that's nowhere near our standards. And we want to get that taste out of our mouth with a great performance and a great victory. We have to play well to beat Maine. We know that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We have to bring our best when our best is needed, and that's going to be this Saturday at 6:30 at the Houch.
Mike, I asked you about the offensive line and how they seem improved after the game, and you mentioned in your opening statement how pleased you were with the play in the trenches on both sides. But specifically the defensive line, when you got back to watch the film, was it even better than you sensed on the sidelines, or were you like, I knew it was good then and I still...
It's interesting. From the sideline, I watched our defensive line and I was, going into that game, you're concerned. I mean, that offensive line is the cover story on Sports Illustrated. Those 5 guys, that's a big challenge. You're a group of 5 football team. You go against that kind of an offensive line. Your biggest concern is, can we hold up at the point? And early on, I felt like we held up extremely well, and I could actually physically see our defensive line penetrating on the sideline. I could see them, getting off of double teams. And the thing about Wisconsin's offensive line, everybody thinks they're just big. They're incredibly athletic. And they come off the ball so quickly with that size. And we won't see, I don't know that we'll ever see an offensive line at this school like we saw against Wisconsin. And I was so pleased with how those guys fought. Man, those guys, Kenny Martin and Jimmy Lindsay have done a great job with that group. And we'll continue to get better and make more plays, as the season goes on.
Mike, go ahead. Go ahead, man. I know you have Louisville in about 2 weeks, and there are probably guys on the team looking forward to that game, but how do you keep them focused on a team like Maine? They are in FCS, and sometimes those smaller groups get overlooked.
Well, I think first off, we watched the film yesterday. Changed the schedule up from last season. Last season, when the players' off day was Sunday. This season, Sunday is a work day for us, and we've themed it out as Assessment Sunday. Assess what happened in the game, and there comes a point in time where we essentially bury the previous game. We put it in win or loss or great performance, bad performance. We're honest. We make the changes. We make the corrections. All of us, coaches, players, everybody looks ourselves in the eyes and assesses what we did well and what we need to do better. And then like I said, we move on to the next chapter. And for us, that Sunday night practice that we had last night, period 6 was versus scout team, and it was all Maine. And that point in time, that's when the focus shifts directly to our upcoming opponent. Now, to go back to the Wisconsin game and how it relates to the Louisville game, one of our goals in this program, and it's not something we just like to talk about, is to defeat a Power 5 conference team. I thought from a matchup standpoint, we tasted what it feels like to match up with a top 5 team in the country. We tasted that. Now the scoreboard nowhere showed where we want to be. We want to win games like that. And so what we were able to do is to look at the film and show, here are the instances of us matching up and even being dominant in fits and starts in plays, and here are examples of that, of how we match up with the top 4 team in the country, and we can take confidence from that. Then on the flip side of that, these are the plays in all 3 phases that didn't allow us to be in the game at the end of the game, right? Where it wasn't, essentially a competitive game going into the final stretch, and that's what you can show them, because we will get another opportunity against a Power 5 team. Now, we didn't talk about them by name, we didn't mention them, but we wanted to see where we matched up well, how we matched up to get the confidence going into another opportunity like that. And then on the flip side, we wanted to understand that we can't make critical errors in situational football, myself included, to win those big games. Now, we understand, I'd already talked to the team about it, just put on the Maine versus New Hampshire film, okay? Just watch that game, watch the way that Maine flies around. Watch the way their defense hit the quarterback at UNH, knocked out the preseason player of the year for CAA in the second quarter, knocked him out of the game, maybe done for the season, I don't know, okay? Knocked out a second quarterback, here comes the third quarterback. So watch that game, it's all you need, okay? Now I'll say this group of players right now that we're coaching, I love these kids. These players, they're focused on the right things. They're focused on the preparation, they're focused on getting better every week. They're not dwelling on the negatives, they're finding ways to get better every day and dwell on the positives and how we can improve as a football program. That was just step 1, and hopefully what's a 14-step process this year. And I think we come away from that first game with some encouragement, but we got to win a football game.
Mike, I have one more thing. This could apply throughout every home game this season, but more so this weekend. What do you want your coaching staff and the current players to take from interacting and meeting the former players, the former great players here?
Yeah, I think us representing the 100th edition of WKU football, it's a big honor. It's a big responsibility for our team. But we always, and I want to make this very clear, we as a program, myself as the head coach, our players, we want all of our former players to know that they are always welcome around our team. And when you have 100 years of legacy, 100 years of history, that says a lot. And there's nothing that our players get more of a kick out of than hearing from the guys that played in the 60s or 70s, hearing about how things were different. Tim Ford coming on the trip with us this past week, and even him talking about what a pregame meal under Coach Fikes was a lot different than a pregame meal is now. And I was surprised. I thought it'd be the opposite. He said, I can't believe how locked in and focused these guys are. We were a bunch of knuckleheads. I'm like, really? I had thought that back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, man, it was Bear Bryant, it was Junction Boys, it was that style. And, just those kinds of things that you hear the anecdotes from the old players. We want them around. And it's going to be great. This first game back in the Houch, in the spot that a lot of these guys have played, whether the stadium was half completed or not, we want those guys to come around and be around our program. And we want to honor, the players on the All-Century team, but not just them, all the players that have laid the foundation for what we're capable of doing now.
Coach, quick question on that, Dre. His health status? I know he went down during the game. Dre Ferris.
Oh no, he's great. Yeah, a little minor cramp. I'll tell you what, when you get paid $1.35 million to go play the number 4 team in the country, the number one thing you're always wondering is how what is the true cost going to be for us going to play them? We know what the cost for them is to invite us to their stadium, but what's the cost for us going to be? And man, I'm encouraged by what happened from a health standpoint coming out of that game. We matched up better than I thought in certain instances, and then to come out healthy with a team that just wears on you and pounds you and hits you, and I mean there was some thumping out there. You saw it, on both sides of the ball, and for us to come out, with minor issues, it says a lot about our strength and conditioning and our sports medicine program.
Mike, you got